Hey, what's going on YouTube? Like many of you out there, I've played the Dark Souls series many times. And throughout the times that I've played it, I've obviously thought about the storyline that sort of unfolds through all the different things and dialogue and items and whatnot that are in the game. And there's a lot of speculation in the community about various things. However, one thing that I've never seen speculated is Horace in Dark Souls 3. Horace is obviously the companion alongside Anri, who he or she, from now on I'm just going to say she basically will go hollow without Horace in her life. She, in my opinion, actually looks to Horace as even more than just a friend. And I don't mean more than a friend as in there's some sort of like lover or sexual relationship between the two. But I actually think that Horace is Anri's guide. Now, many people in the community, when they're thinking of Horace, they always consider him to sort of be a very, especially when he turns hollow, it's a very sad story. In fact, if you're playing online, almost every single time that you go to see Horace down there, in that, I forget the name of the area, but in that pit area, there's always people writing on the ground saying things like sadness ahead and, all this different stuff that just kind of makes you feel bad about Horace. And I have to admit, I have as well. It's part of the whole thing, the camaraderie between Horace and Anri and all this stuff, and it's one of the rich parts of the whole Dark Souls 3 story, and it's constantly talked about in the community, especially in that way. However, I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench into that whole thing for a second. I'm really going to grind some gears possibly with what I'm about to say, because I think it's something that people really have overlooked. And that is that Horace is actually evil. What proof do I have of this? Well, it's really just one line in the entire game that's spoken by a character well, obviously not Horace because he's a hush, right? He doesn't have a tongue. And it's not spoken by Anri, but it's actually spoken by Yuria of Londor. And I'll play that clip for you right now so you can hear what she says.
Knowest thou of a maid named Anri? She is hollow, and will join thee in wedlock. A fellow of mine guides her at this moment. When the time is ripe, thou mayst make thy salutations. For what lord taketh no spouse?
Now this is something that Yuria says when you are going down the path of the Dark Sigil and all that stuff and whatever. Towards the, I guess, middle/end of the game, specifically towards the end of Anri's quest line, where you're making the choice as to whether or not you're basically going to kill her and marry her. But the very important thing, and it's just one sentence, but there's so much in that sentence, is what she says about one of her fellows leading Anri right now.
A fellow of mine guides her at this moment.
Now, it's very important that we actually pay attention to the specific wording of that sentence, because I think what a lot of people believe is that fellow that she's talking about is the pilgrim, where you make a choice to either kill it or let it live in the chapel just before you go and you defeat Pontiff. Obviously, if you kill that pilgrim who is in a corner and camouflage themselves as a statue, then this breaks that whole quest line with Yuria, and of course Anri will not become your spouse. If you leave it, then the pilgrim will kill Anri. Now the thing is that there's two important parts about what she said. One, when she says that about having a fellow guiding Anri, she says this while Horace is still alive, before you get to the point of the chapel, like I just said with the pilgrim. So she could be saying it right then and there about both. She's definitely not only saying it about the pilgrim. So we can at the very least say, okay, this could apply to Horace. Now I'm going to give you the specifics as to why it's definitely applying to Horace, and not the pilgrim. Because she says that her fellow is guiding Anri. Now, you could say, well, Anri has met somebody else along her path, her and Horace, and is getting help from Uria's friend, right? Who she's saying is helping them out and guiding them. You could speculate that, okay, well, she's just getting guided by this pilgrim. Sort of similar to the way that you're guided at the beginning by the pilgrim that you find. However, there's nothing really that is pointing in that direction, specifically given the fact that that pilgrim is hiding in the shadows, so to speak, right? Specifically in the case of Anri in the church, is hiding as a statue. If you're Anri's guide, you have to be present, right? She has to be aware of you so that you can guide her. And then now take a look at Anri's relationship with Horace. As I said at the beginning of all this, it seems like Horace is way more important than just a friendship. Immediately we know that the moment Horace becomes lost to Anri, she's confused as to where to go. The moment he disappears and they get separated, she has no direction anymore. Now, if Anri was the one that was leading the duo, she definitely wouldn't have any issues of direction, right? She'd still have a focus, she'd still have a goal in mind. Yeah, okay, it sucks that she lost Horace, but she wouldn't feel so lost. So the fact that she feels lost when Horace is not around shows that Horace was the one that was guiding her the entire time. So if anybody is being depicted in Dark Souls 3 as a guide to Anri, it's Horace. And so at that point, when we hear the words that Uria speaks,
a fellow of mine guides her at this moment.
In my opinion, we then have to make the conclusion that Horace is the fellow that she speaks of, which would make Horace evil. And that's why what I'm talking about matters so much, because so many people look at Horace as being this sort of benevolent friend of Anri, this pillar of light for her, and so on and so forth. However, the entire time, she was being deceived by the whole people from Londor, basically, that are trying to create their new Dark Lord, which would mean that Horace was part of that group as well. And there's a lot of things here and there that change, really, at that point. Specifically, the story of Anri becomes one that's quite sad, and in ways that we weren't thinking it was in the first place. It actually becomes way darker, because it was sad in the perspective that everybody had before, because she lost this wonderful friend of hers that was the only thing that was keeping her sane. But the truth is that that was all a lie to begin with, and she really never had anybody that was on her side at all. She was doomed from the get-go, win or lose. And that's just really, really dark. Now, this leaves one question left, which is, at that point, why does Horace become hollow? Well, that really actually doesn't change much at all. The same reason as how he got trapped down there and went hollow because he could no longer continue his quest with Anri. It's the same thing. It's just that his quest was not what you thought it was. So he became hollow because his only purpose was to guide Anri for Londor. But now he doesn't have that anymore because he got separated from her, fell into that chasm, and was locked in there by the ballista. And so therefore he went hollow. There's really no difference there. So this doesn't even sort of change that narrative. It just makes you realize that his whole quest line, his own personal quest line, was way darker than anyone realizes. And I'll leave that there for now. If anybody knows any other kind of information out there of something that I'm missing, because I really do love the lore. I watch videos about it now and then. I've never seen anybody talk about this whatsoever. And in fact, it always seems like Horace is held up in this very high regard as this, like I said, this sort of beacon of light to Anri and whatever. However, as I just stated, and hopefully proved, it was false light the entire time. Take care, guys.